This is the fourth attempt I've made at recording this video. You do not know the things I've seen, the experiences I've had. But anyway, let's talk about the Faded Sun Trilogy by CJ Cherryh, Nebula nominated high sci-fi. Cherryh had, or also won in the 80s, this is from the 80s, also won 2 Hugos in that time for Citeen and for Down Below Station. At least Down Below Station and I think Citeen are both in the same universe as this, the Alliance Union universe. Citeen may not be. But yeah, she was an important writer at the time, and along with Orson Scott Card and Louis McMaster Bujold, won a lot of the awards in the 80s and early 90s. Now, significantly eclipsed, which either is a warning that current awards do not mean that you're valuable or will be remembered, or it means perhaps alternatively that our tastes have gone astray on this point. We'll find out as we talk about it. This is the blurb. They were the Umri, tall, secretive, bound by honour and the rigid dictates of their society. For eons, this golden-skinned, golden-eyed race had provided the universe with mercenary soldiers of almost unimaginable ability. But for decades now, the Umri have faced an enemy unlike any other. An enemy who does not honour single combat, whose only way of war is widespread destruction. These humans are mass fighters, creatures of the herd, and the Umri have been slaughtered like animals. Now, in the aftermath of war, the Umri face extinction. It will be up to 3 individuals to save whatever remains of the devastated race. A Kel, a warrior, one of the last survivors of his kind. A Sen, a priestess of this honourable people. And a lone human, a man sworn to aid the enemy of his own kind. Can they retrace the galaxy-wide path of this nomadic race back through millennia to reclaim the ancient world that first gave them life? So, some influences in the background. Dune is an influence, Battlestar Galactica possibly, or Manta Force, which basically have the same plot, by the way. The Manta Force toys have the same plot as Battlestar Galactica, where they're trying to go and find the twin to their Earth. Those are some background elements. There's a lot more going on than that, but in terms of atmospherics and in terms of some of the interesting animal stuff, you could find that in Dune, the way that animals work. And then the kind of the basic quest for the Umri is very much like BSG, which was predated this, I think, in the 70s. So, is this good? Is this bad? Here's the core contention: is that this stands or falls on its culture and characters. I talk about its plot and its style, but its culture and characters are basically they're what I liked about it, and they're what I thought was valuable about it. Essentially, the biggest thing is that you get 3 cultures, chiefly 3, and by 3 cultures I mean 3 species. You get your Umri, you get your humans, and you get the species that, or race that has employed the Umri, the Regul, or at least a house of the Regul, a dock. And the big thing you get is this big culture deep dive, fed in small bits, small chunks over the course of 750 pages. Each of the books is about 250. The books are called Kesrith, Shon'jir and Kutath. So you get this drip-fed system of learning about the cultures through different points of view. You start with kind of a human point of view, a Umri point of view, and you get Regul points of view as well over the course of the trilogy. And these are chiefly from 2 characters. The human, who's mentioned on the blurb, Sten Duncan, mostly known as Duncan, and the Kel, who's the warrior caste of the Umri, Naun. The Sen, the priestess, is called Malaine, and she is Naun's sister. There's a 3rd caste in the Umri, which is the Kath, who are functionally the women and children caste. Women can join the 2 castes. They're in that sense egalitarian, but essentially the kind of the homemaking caste. That's how their species works. The humans are basically, they are Western values humans of the 20th and 21st century. They're egalitarian and technocratic. You notice, by the way, that you never get like a space culture, nearly never at least, space culture is based on, I don't know, like modern Ghana or Uganda or India. No one's ever like, man, what would that culture... I mean, Lord of Light does play with that, of course, with Indian mythology, but chiefly we write sci-fi in the West, maybe naturally on the basis of our most common values. And so yeah, humans in space are just humans in the West in the 1980s and 90s. Then you've got your Umri with their three castes. They're very caste bound, very taboo-laden, very honour-focused. All three casts, especially the Kel, the warrior caste, who in an old version, an old blurb of Kesrith, the first book I described as the samurai caste, which of course is misleading in some ways, but the fact we know what they're getting at shows the kind of power of that cultural trope, for good or bad. And basically they're very honour-bound, they're very much into kind of service, duty, perfection, being very good at stuff, about the careful gradation of caste and class. And then the Ragul are traders who have perfect memory. They remember everything, and they are chiefly kind of logical recombinators. They think about, this is what has happened, this is what might happen based on what has happened. They see themselves as lacking imagination. They do not lie. They may be able to mislead, but they do not lie. The Imri, for different reasons, are not considered to lie. For the Imri, it's because of the issue of honour. For the Ragul, it's because they almost cannot compass the invention of alternative facts. It actually creates genuine mental distress. So these three cultures, and the Ragul have, this house of the Ragul had hired the Umri for thousands of years, and the Umri had fought on their behalf in a war for the last 40 years with the humans, and the humans, as part of the peace treaty, come to take one of the worlds which they take a number of border worlds, but one has a very small remnant of Umri population. They go to this place called Kesrith. There are other Umri, not very many, but there are other Umri in the Ragul Empire still. But they go there, which leads them into this triple threat, this triple cultural clash, where we do not understand as the human reader what's going on. In fact, a challenge, not a bad challenge, but a challenge you have to accept if you want to enjoy these, is that for much of the first book particularly, you are reading things and you're like, why are these people like this? I don't mean in a kind of outraged way, like, oh, I can't believe they're like this. Just bafflement. Why are these Umri like this? Why are these Ragul like this? And that's kind of, I think, a common thread through it, is that they don't understand each other and you don't understand them. And then you see how the Umri and the Ragul see humans, and you're like, oh, these humans, I can see why they're very alienating to the Umri and the Ragul. They don't share the core values of those societies. And I think this is great Thai sci-fi. This is incredibly good cultural building, delivered very well, and which challenges our perceptions of, essentially, I think we're very prone to, aren't we? Everyone in every culture ever has been prone to assume the uniformity and universality of every one of their cultural tropes, every one of their cultural values. And challenging that and requiring us to think about it is, I think, a really valuable thing this does. And the point is, it does it well. It doesn't just say, here's some things you have to think about. It kind of does it in this very technically adept way. And from that springs character conflict and growth, particularly between Nayan and Duncan, who... Duncan is also a warrior. He's a Surtak, a surface tactical force kind of member, special forces, not regular forces, special forces, and he ends up getting associated more closely and closely with the Umri, and him and Nayan have kind of an enemies to friends arc, but it's always haunted by the fact that really this culture that Duncan's trying to engage with on behalf of the humans, he doesn't understand, they don't understand him, and there's got to be this meeting of minds between species which are so different, including biologically different. The Ragul are more biologically different. There's a point made fairly late on, but someone observes that probably our reaction to the Ragul is more negative than that of the Emry. This is a human, because the Umri look more like us and they have qualities we admire more. But this person is saying, but they're dangerous, whereas the Ragul are much less dangerous generally. Not always, they can be dangerous, but it's something where you can work with them generally. Whereas how can you work with the Umri? And I think that's one of the challenges actually you see across the book, is of how you deal with these two species, how the humans deal with these two species who have radically different personalities, as it were. It's just in a very group sense. And the humans also have this personality that is genuinely defined. But that's the character conflict that comes up throughout, is people who have all these different expectations and who are trying to understand each other. And you see that particularly through Nayan and Duncan, and that's a great friendship, very powerful, but always tense. You see other good characters too. There's a character called Dr. Boaz. She's very good late on in the second and third books, particularly. I think mostly in the third book actually, but no spoilers to say this person exists. And you get lots of minor characters who only get 1 or 2 points of view each, but if you really start to see the world through again, you get another bit of the puzzle. And I think this reminds me of Kim Stanley Robinson in the Mars books. I say that I've only read Mars, the others are in the same style though. In terms of, he has a point of view thing which reminds you in terms of character depth of someone like Joe Abercrombie, but stylistically is much more subtle. Abercrombie is a heroic fantasy and action fantasy writer, so here's just everything they're thinking and feeling. Here's this intensity, this out loudness, whereas Robinson and Cherryh are a lot more lateral, and a lot more in that sense more real, bluntly. There's no criticism of Abercrombie, they're different styles, but there's a subtlety here where people just don't get what's going on a lot. There is a genuine kind of self-puzzlement sometimes. You're trying to work out what people are thinking of themselves. They're telling you by their point of view things about themselves and their culture, and you are not equipped to understand them properly because you haven't got the whole puzzle. It's not that there are secrets, there are secrets, but it's not, you're often being told stuff that you're like, I don't have the equipment to understand this, and this situation is not one the character can understand either. I'm in a situation where the character does not understand what they're seeing, and therefore I don't. It's not unreliable narration, it's actually very reliable narration on the whole, but what I mean is perception. It has an issue of both our perceptions and the character's perceptions, stylistically, which is done really well. So the style on the whole is quite spec. She's not an attractive, beautiful writer. That's not a big criticism. It did mean, I think, in the first book where you're building a world and where possibly structurally it's the slowest. In the second, well, in some sense it's structurally the slowest in the second book. In that one, I think there is a degree of when the dryness of the style kind of made me think, oh, I am enjoying this, but it wasn't blowing me away. I think as other things improve, that becomes less of an issue. She has a very workable style, it's fine. People don't kind of complain. In one sense, she's almost Andersonian in terms of not having a style, you know, and by that I mean having a generic style. She's not super descriptive, she's not incredibly powerful and luscious with that kind of stuff. Her skill is in what she's telling you, not how she's telling it. Structurally, there are kind of some issues on and off throughout the first book, structured quite slowly. The third book, Kutath, kind of doesn't have a functional structure. It has a plot that happens, and it's a good plot in most respects, but the structure it doesn't necessarily kind of always aid it. It's kind of fairly baggy and loose. The second book, Shon'jir, is actually the one that in some ways has the tightest structure, but is also the one in which and this was no problem for me, it's my favourite of the three, where it's not clear, the plot sometimes is intentional, like, look, what's happening here is character stuff, what's happening here is culture stuff, not plot stuff. So in that sense, you get a lot of stuff in the back end of the first book, the end of the second book, and most of the third book. The third book is higher action throughout. I think that's one of the challenges with the structure actually for Cherryh. But structurally, there are some elements of it in which the superstructure struggles. The substructure, the way in which she reveals information and the way in which she builds things, generally speaking, works and is enjoyable, very good, in fact. I was certainly impressed by that, and I came away having enjoyed the first book and going, oh, that was good, without being blown away. And then getting it being better in the second book, and about the medium point in the third book, and thinking actually in conclusion, these are really quite good books. They're not amazing books, but I think, put it this way, I've read, when you read newer award-winning stuff as well, like, is this better or worse? Have we gained technically in 30 or 40 years? And my general conclusion is often, sometimes, but not usually. I think generally I look at this and think, this is as good, it has lots of stuff coming out now, and it does some stuff much more interestingly than anything I've read that been published in the last 10 years. If you're interested in genuine culture, deep dive, and kind of careful building up of that picture as if you were discovering those cultures for yourself, this is excellent for that. So that was my general impression. I would recommend it with those kind of caveats about, go into it knowing what you're getting into, know that there's some issues with style and structure intermittently. I'd say probably think about it as, this is best to think of as one book almost. Citeen actually was published in separate volumes, is now being published as one because that's what she preferred. This is, I think, still technically happily advertised as 3 books, but I would read it as one, because otherwise I think you'll end up possibly thinking, oh, that was an interesting book after the first book, and then you won't go on because completed it. But then none of them are very long, so I would get stuck in at that level. One actually extra thing I should have said about plot. Structurally, yes, superstructure sometimes baggy, substructure strong, one-way substructure strong. Additionally, it genuinely will surprise you. I'm hard to surprise narratively. Most things that happen in books are narratively signalled, and where they're not strongly signalled, they're usually like, oh, okay, I get it, yeah. Here, stuff happened that was not what the ordinary plot demanded, but which the world demanded. At a deep level, it was what characters would do, how things would happen. There's a couple of big instances like that, and the way that things pan out, the way things resolve at different points in the trilogy is not shocking, is not at all the term, but because you end up like, I see what, yeah, okay. But rather it's something where you think, I was expecting this to be a normal story, and it's chosen to be something deeper. So yeah, that's a fun recommendation. I think if you're interested in stories that structurally work, even if there are some issues, but which choose to do things in terms of the way they develop their plot much more granularly, realistically, this is a good one for that as well. But yeah, that's my recommendation, and I'd read it as a trilogy. Of course, if you read the first one and hate it, don't read the rest. But I get the trilogy omnibus. And yeah, I will almost certainly be reading some more CJ Cherryh. Down Below Station is a standalone and a Hugo winner, so that might be my next place to go. If you have read much Cherryh, tell me what you think of that. If you've read the Faded Sun Trilogy, tell me what you think of that. And generally, kind of, let's talk about high sci-fi, good culture developing books. Till next time.